wolf only, but a known wolf. They do that constantly. But if it was a legitimate investigation, I mean, this is not even what he's saying is, besides the Constitution, besides the principles of the Constitution, you don't even have a good pragmatic reason for doing this. Because if we're doing legitimate investigations of people who are terrorists, who are criminals, who are plotting something, we don't want to alert them. So even the people who buy this official government narrative should look at this and say, this doesn't make any sense from a pragmatic standpoint. Well, forget the Constitution. It just doesn't make any good sense from an investigation. But we know it's been used over and over again to allow these episodes to go forward because it fits their political agenda.
Right. And if everyone's asking, well, the FBI knew about this guy, why didn't they do anything the many countless times? Is this why? Because they were wanting to see who he was talking to, where he was going, and then, you know, maybe he just acted a little too quickly for them to stop him.
Well, they pulled him off those lists a couple years ago. But they also include dead people on the no-fly list. Maybe Omar is now on the no-fly list. Yeah, now that he's dead.
Retroactively on the no-fly list.
Because they do that in case people try to use assumed names. So dead people, children, anybody. And then we interviewed back in 2012 Wade Hicks, who was flying around. One of the first stories I covered. Yeah, he was flying around, and a 34-year-old Mississippi resident was going to visit his wife, who was a Navy lieutenant stationed in Okinawa. And on his way back, he was basically stopped in Hawaii, and he couldn't. He was on his way there. He was on his way there.
He never got to see her because they detained him in Hawaii. I mean, you get into Hawaii, and they put you on a no-fly list. He flew there on a military plane. And then they transferred the planes, and he's going to do the second leg going to Japan. And they come on the plane as it's about to take off and say, "You come with us."
Yeah, very
Took him off. Said, "You're on a no-fly list. You can't." It was like, what's going on? This guy had been vetted by the TSA. He had all kinds of licenses and privileges from them. He had been vetted for firearms and all these other types of things. No explanation given to him. And of course, they pull you off in Hawaii. You're stuck if you can't fly. I mean, it's like, how am I going to get out of here? Am I going to catch a slow freighter out of here or whatever? But they kept him there for a couple of weeks. He never got to see his wife. Eventually, because it became a big issue, we covered it. The military stepped down and they put him out. But here's the deal. They would never tell him why he was on the list. They would never tell him how he could get off the list or whether he was still on the list.
He was still on it. And we have that video right now, so you can actually hear from his mouth. Back in 2012, you know, what this guy had to go through. It was from our old studio. This is David Knight, vintage David Knight from 2012. So let's roll that video.
If you're in that type of situation, you have to keep your head screwed on straight. Don't get emotional and just do whatever you know or what you think is the best thing to do. And for me, it was going to the media, going to my friends, because those were really the only people that were going to be able to help me. The government wasn't going to do anything to help me. They were just doing their whole bureaucratic nightmare stuff. So I could have been there 3 months had I not been as proactive as I was trying to get this story out.
That's right, and they still, to this day, have not given you any information as to why you were put on the list or what your current status is, whether you're on the list or whether you're off of the list, right?
No, they've never, I've asked for it in writing. They've never given me anything in writing to say that I was on the list. They never gave me anything that says I was off the list. And it completely throws everything we know about the Constitution and due process out the window.
Yeah, it's a very dangerous situation, not just for you, but for everybody. Because when the government can secretly accuse somebody of something, you still have no idea what they thought was wrong. Okay, you can see the rest of that when we come. If you want to go to the Alex Jones channel, you can look that up. This is an interesting quote from Lindsey Graham, our favorite senator here. He says, we got a lot of favorite senators.
Who just went to Bilderberg. Just went to Bilderberg.
That's right, at Bilderberg.
Confirmed sighting at the airport. So
here's what Lindsey Graham says. He says, the only way you should get off the list is if they no longer believe you're a threat. It should have nothing to do with not being able to prove a crime. Nothing to do with not being able to prove a crime. In other words, as he said before, shut up. You don't get a lawyer. And we don't have to prove that you're not doing a crime or however that works. All these double negatives. I'm confused, Lindsey. How does this work?
Yeah.
It's just pure. I mean, this is tyranny. This is something we should all be very concerned about because it's all done in secret.
And this is one of those problems that's not right out in the open. So unless it's affecting you, most people probably won't even care about this no-fly list because they're not being affected by it.
Right.
But it's going to be a no-drive list.
And then it'll be a no-work list.
They're conflating the no-fly list with the terror watch list. So people that don't really understand the difference between the two are just automatically assuming it means you're a terrorist and not understanding that children are being put on this list.
And you're being, sequestered by people like TSA agents who really have no idea what the law is anyway and could care less. I had them when I was going to Dresden. they were saying, telling me that the reason we have these body scanners for the underwear bomber. I'm like, look, it's all fake, man. It's all fake. It's all theater. I don't know what more to tell you.
Expose that, yeah.
It's totally ridiculous, but they don't stop.
All right, I'm David Knight. We're going to be right back with Rob Dew and Leanne McAdoo. There is much more to talk about with this. They say, we're not charging you with a crime, so you don't get a due process. Yeah, we'll talk about that when we come back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight with Rob Dew and Leanne McAdoo. We've been talking about the watch list. Watch out, because you may be on that list. You wouldn't know if they put you on the list because they do it in secret. Remember the Constitution? Remember the Sixth Amendment? It says you will be given the opportunity to confront your accusers. You'll be able to have a public and speedy trial where you'll get a trial by jury. You'll have a right to a defense attorney, so forth and so on. Why did they do that? Well, they did that, as you all know, because there was a Star Chamber in England where they would meet secretly and they would indict people and
whisked away in the night.
Yeah, exactly. You disappear in the night. So now we are bringing this back. This is the hallmark of tyranny. This is pre-crime. This is Franz Kafka's bureaucracy where you can't get an answer. It's like, wait a minute, you can't do this or that. Well, I'm on a list. What list? How did I get on the list? What am I charged with? How do I get off the list? I don't know. That's the Kafka aspect of it. It is outright tyranny. Mm-hmm. And I think really the roots of this, if we want to know where this is coming from, it goes back to the war on drugs. It goes on to civil asset forfeiture, because what they're saying to you is that they don't have to give you due process because they're only putting you on a watch list. And then they're using that watch list to give you punishments. They're saying, we haven't convicted you of a crime. We're not accusing you of any crime. We're just putting you on a list.
We haven't put you in jail yet.
Yeah, exactly.
You just can't fly, can't get a job.
Yeah, you haven't been accused of a crime. And they've used the same legal fiction throughout the war on drugs to say, we're going to take your property. We're not going to charge you with anything. We're just going to take your plane or your house or your car because we think that your plane or your house or your car was possibly and tangentially involved in this crime. But we're not going to charge you with anything. And it's not a criminal action. It's a civil action. And we're just going to call it a forfeiture, not a taking. We're not going to say it's a fine, a penalty. It's a forfeiture. You wanted to forfeiture that, right? And it's a civil action. So that means that if you want to clear if you want to get your property back, you have to sue them. They're not going to provide you with a lawyer. You will have to provide the capital to sue them to get your property back that they have stolen.
And they have unlimited money, which is your money, to fight that.
That makes me so angry.
And they usually win.
Interestingly enough, we just had a case come up here in the state of Texas, June 10th. We had the Supreme Court here in Texas say, no, illegal searches are okay and can be used for asset forfeiture cases. So an illegal search would throw them out of a criminal conviction, but they could do an illegal search and still take your property like this car. They said, no, I think that it would punish the law enforcement too much. We already punish law enforcement by not letting them get a conviction. This is what the Supreme Court here in Texas said. We're already punishing law enforcement by denying their conviction, so we don't want to punish them by taking away the stuff they're stealing from you. It's like, what about the punishment of the people?
Right.
That's absolutely insane.
We're always last on the list.
Yeah.
Which is why we just saw this article, and we talked about, this is something we talked about years ago. Feds quietly consider reviving EPA's human testing program. This is where they put people in a room and literally turn on diesel engines and run fumes. Tailpipe. Yeah, they hook up the tailpipe and they run it right into a room and you sit and breathe it. And they go, we're going to see how you react.
That does mess up your brain.
And what's even worse about that, Rob, was they were selecting and screening for people who already had respiratory issues and heart issues because they wanted to show an effect, a dramatic effect.
Bad.
Yeah, we had Lisa Jackson, who was head of the EPA at the time, had testified before Congress. She said, no, these fine particulate matter levels that we're talking about, we're not just talking about making people sick. We're talking about death. And then they expose people to 70 times that level so they can ratchet up the regulations. And so it's like this catch-22. It's like, well, you're lying to us in Congress, or are you deliberately doing some kind of Joseph Mengele experiment on people?
And if you look at the weather modification laws that they have written, they can do all this as long as it's in a testing phase. So they can test on us all day long as long as they say, we're just testing.
Yeah,
we're just testing on it.
Running some tests.
Oh, what's falling from the sky? Well, it's just a test.
This is a test. If this were a real genocide, you would be dead by now. But stay tuned for those results.
We're going to slow kill you because we want your tax money, you slave. So wake up out there. Wake up.
That's right. David Knight, Rob Dew, and Leanne McAdoo. And join us tonight for the InfoWars Nightly News.
Jakari
at
Jackson.
7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. Not Jakari Jackson will be there for that. Yeah.